Day 2025, we look at how TV evolved from a politically restricted medium to a cornerstone of public discourse, representation, and national storytelling. Now, from its delayed introduction in 1976 to the rise of community broadcasters such as ourselves, Soweto TV, 1KZN, Cape Town TV, and TBN Television has shaped political awareness, cultural identity, and democratic participation across South Africa. Now, joining us in studio via Zoom to unpack this evolution is Media Development and Diversity Agency Chief Executive Officer Shweshwe Qu, who's joining us this evening on the show. Shweshwe, much appreciated for taking the time and joining us on Soweto today. Good evening.
Khotso Thabo, and khotso to the viewers of Soweto TV.
Khotso indeed. I mean, South Africa has once, rejected television as a spiritual danger. I mean, let's talk about how did this fear shape its delayed introduction, and what does the history reveal about the power of the media?
I think for South Africa, community TV specifically has become the cornerstone of our democracy. It's become a form of our media landscape in storytelling for various community members. I think, yes, at the start, there were concerns around the type of content we are seeing on TV and the pictures that we're seeing, but I think we can't also away some of the benefits of having TV in that it brought families together, that everyone in the evening sat down and had an opportunity to look at one visuals and one story and watch the news. And I think that remains key in South Africa. According to that says household survey, over 70% of South Africans own television sets. Yes, there might be changes, but TV still remains one of the favored ways in which people consume content and receive information and knowledge.
I mean, once TV finally arrived back in 1976, there was somehow, jubilation and, all these things. But let's talk about how did it influence, public awareness, culture, and the political consciousness during the apartheid days and the transition to democracy.
Yeah, I think it's really been interesting for us. I think if you compare South Africa and the rest of the world, we saw television much, much later. I think by the time we even saw television broadcast in our own indigenous languages, it was already in the 80s. And yes, there has been some tumultuous time in the stories that television has had to cover. I think also imagine the shock of many South Africans in the 70s where they were suddenly able to see the world in their own living rooms. And I think that definitely influenced the culture in how we saw things and how we observed, and also how we saw stories of South Africa in context to those of the rest of the world. Because TV took away what we only could imagine from what we were hearing already. You were now able to see what was happening, not just in other parts of South Africa, but the world over. So I do think that today, when we think about television, we think about, yes, a public broadcaster in the form of the SABC, but I think there's been great stride in the growth within community TV. We look at channels like Soweto TV. You spoke about 1KZN, which broadcasts to the community in KwaZulu-Natal, and you see the type of impact those community channels have had in the South African media landscape. There's quite a number of broadcasters that are now prominent on national broadcast stage who have gone through Soweto TV. But also we know that there are issues that we would never see, and even cultural experiences that are very specific to what you would see if you were in Soweto. We would never see the light of day if not for television, more specifically for community TV stations like Soweto TV.
I'm glad that you mentioned that, because that was my next, question, especially after 1994, looking at ourselves as Soweto TV transforming the media landscape. You mentioned that, they've expanded access and amplified local voices that were previously excluded. But let's talk about today, as the MDDA focusing on media and diversity, including empowerment, how does that mandate support democracy and ensure that communities remain part of South Africa's national conversation?
Yes, and I think that's important to mention. I mean, MDDA's mandate of a media development and diversity is anchored in the constitution of the country, which guarantees freedom of expression, including the freedom of the press. And when you think about freedom of expression, you think about the communities who suddenly have an opportunity to have their own views aired on radio and to be able, or rather aired on television, to be able to impart their knowledge on, but also the ability for the station to broadcast. We've seen in many other countries where broadcasting isn't as easy, or freedom of the press is as easy as we experience here in South Africa. But also another key component or tenet of our constitution is the guarantee to access information. Now, while there's information that can be shared via audio, and I must say, I do have a bias of radio because my journey started in radio broadcasting, but there are stories which you simply cannot tell without using visuals. There's also members of the community we wouldn't be able to reach if we didn't have TV. You have sign language shows and sign language interpreters so that we can reach community members who are not able to hear, and that is very important. So when we talk about diversity in the form of the MDDA, it's focusing on not just diversity of the ownership and control of the media, but also providing that plural platform for members of various society sects to be able to access that information so that they're able to make better decisions, informed decisions. And I think while there's room for all of us within the landscape, because I think we all cannot deny that there has been some developments that are brought on by technology where people aren't just watching television alone, they are watching TV, but they're also on their mobile devices. And the question is always, how do we, as media practitioners on the television platforms, take those audiences along, understanding that we are not their only source of information? But I also want to emphasize that in the age of mis and disinformation, what you find with your traditional community televisions and television just holistically is that you can trust the information that you get. Even worse for a community TV, Tabo, if you lied, the community will be waiting for you outside. So they can hold you directly accountable for the information. So community TV and television as a whole still really plays an important role in imparting that knowledge and information to the people of Soweto and South Africa holistically.
Sure, we're going to park it there for now as we are continuing unpacking the journey from restricted media to today's diverse broadcast environment. I'm glad that you touched on the issue of the evolution of television and or just media in general, but we will unpack that further after the ad break. Shweshwe Kude, the CEO of MDDA, joining us this evening. Let's take a quick ad break. We're coming back after this. Welcome back. You're still watching Soweto Today. Much appreciated for joining us this evening. We are talking all things television as today marks World Television Day. Now, as digital migration, streaming services, AI and shifting audience patterns reshape the media landscape, television remains one of the most trusted and unifying platforms in South Africa. We're still joined by MDDA CEO Shweshwe virtually as we unpack this. Shweshwe, much appreciated for staying on. As we continue the conversation, despite the rising digital platforms, television remains as one of the most trusted sources with information in the country. Let's talk about what keeps TV so influential in a digital first era.
TV has really rolled onto the hearts of many South Africans. And what we see with television and many other media platforms is that you are able to see the person who is speaking and you are able to experience experience their level of authenticity and make judgments because of the richness in how that story comes across. That makes it very easy then to trust the platform. Now, contrast that with a video you will be seeing online. Yes, it's online on a social media platform, but what we are seeing is that some of these videos could be AI generated in the recent years with AI technologies coming in, but also they could also be deep fakes, or there could be other alterings. But I think television remains relevant because of that trust and credibility that it has built, the fact that people are able to connect with the individuals that they are seeing on TV. I don't think we would have seen often where in a television show, including a show like this one, where there is no news editor or an executive producer who's able to see when there's something wrong that's being said to then help correct. So there's a number of people on the value chain to ensure that the information that is shared is trustworthy. Also, in the South African context, we have licensing regime for your public broadcasters, your commercial broadcasters, as well as community broadcasting. It would be very rare for an established television broadcaster to actually publish misinformation without verifying the information on the basis that it is regulated. And what we see with the online platform, on the other hand, is that there's no vetting, there's nothing to lose. You can say whatever you want. You don't have to account to anyone, and there's no one to complain to about the information that you share, because many of these platforms are owned internationally. So, well, as I said earlier, on community TV and all any other TV platforms, we know exactly who is the person to complain to. There's also frameworks that are provided for people to register their dissatisfaction, whether it's with ICASA, who's the regulator, or it is the BCCSA, but those are clearly put together, and that does give a level of trust to television.
Shosha, I'm glad you mentioned that because, I mean, there's been numerous complaints previously about unregulated space of social media platforms. You look at people saying all these kind of things every day, and then when there are complaints that, people want to put out there, they don't know where, because these social media platforms are owned by international companies. I'm now interested in finding out, we are in the era of AI now, artificial intelligence. I mean, they are changing how content is produced and consumed. How is AI reshaping storytelling and audience engagement here at home?
I think that with the MDDA, in fact, is finalizing a report on the usage of artificial intelligence in various newsrooms. I think the reality is that in South Africa, we are not seeing content that's AI generated at the levels that we are seeing in other countries. They've even gone ahead to experiment with AI from a broadcast point of view. We could have an AI generated Tabo carrying out this program. And one of the reasons why we don't see AI progress as fast as it is progressing in other countries, for example, particularly in the areas of content, is that AI depends on existing information
Yeah.
and an existing repository of data. As Africans, we haven't really built our data and knowledge and information, and we are so unique in our way of speak. We could both be speaking Sesotho, for example, but our pronunciation and our accent is different based on the various areas that we come from. So we haven't gotten artificial intelligence that's developed at the level that it completely comprehends our mannerisms and the way of speak. That doesn't mean that we should stop and wait until developments get to where they need to get to. Yes, it's a large language model and it depends on existing data, but we need to start innovating. within our own South African context, Soweto TV has got a massive archive where you could be training your own AI to start developing content that's generated by AI, but remains authentic and is within the level of trust as well as interest that your community would have interest in. But I think to ensure that we preserve that trust and credibility, when we do use content, whether it's something that you are reading or you are using sound, you have to indicate that this song or sound comes from artificial intelligence. I think there's one other DJ who has gone on to release an AI song. I think it's an Amapiano song. So we are seeing developments in the media and creative space where we are utilizing AI. But I think we have a responsibility of informing audiences that we are utilizing AI. And I think it stands to be tested whether we will continue to retain an engaged audience. We are using AI as much as we do when we are communicating naturally as we've been doing since we've started broadcasting on television and many of the other mediums and platforms we have.
Sure. We're going to take a quick ad break. I'm glad that you mentioned the issue of the competition between, streaming platforms and social media competing for attention in this regard, and also what people need to do in order to make sure that they can, differentiate between what is an AI, for instance, advert. Versus the actual one, but much appreciated for that. We're going to take a quick ad break. Shweshwet Koo, who is the MDDA CEO, joining us in studio virtually as we unpack more on various issues, particularly talking all things television. We're coming back after this. Welcome back. You're still watching Soweto Today. Thank you for choosing to stay with us this evening as we observe World Television Day. Now, helping us to do so is MDDA CEO Shweshwet Koo, who's joining us virtually this evening. Shweshwet, much appreciated. As we wind down the conversation, I mean, beyond information and entertainment, television is a powerful pathway for developing talent and also mentoring young creators and sustaining local storytelling. I mean, now with your extensive experience in broadcasting and digital media, what would be the guidance that you would offer to young South Africans entering the media industry today? Because, you would hear people saying that, look, do not enter this field, it's not a good field, and all these things.
That's very interesting. So I think that community media, not just television, is definitely a pathway to successful careers. I obviously am aware of the comments around people viewing media generally as not a real business, but the media plays a key role in our economy and including sharing of information. If you look at Soweto TV and the type of stars that birthed out of that platform from your local movie stories, which have adopted by other prominent channels, which are now utilizing a model that's similar to yours, we can say that we know for a fact that these kinds of formats of storytelling and local stories are taking work. If you look at some of the talent that has walked through the doors of Soweto to become prominent broadcasters, think about other community radio stations that broadcast in other parts of the world, including from South Africa, that have really built their careers in the space. I often say that I'm a child of community media myself because my journey started at a community radio station. What I would say to young people is that you really have to focus on building your skills and knowledge. And it takes time to build that and hone that to a point where you have the level of confidence and ability to broadcast in a way that's engaging, and you then can expand your talent, not just on your traditional television platforms, but you can start building your own media network and utilizing the tools that are made available by technology like podcasting, but not leave out skills you would have learned from community media. But what we also know is that community media, television specifically, plays a key role in training communities, but also provide an opportunity for those who are creatives within the community, not just from a form of expression in visual and sound, but who are dancers. They have an opportunity to showcase their skills on platforms like Soweto TV. We've seen people who are fashion designers first interviewed or profiled on Soweto TV, who then have gone on to become really successful. Stories of successful young entrepreneurs are also often told on TV and community media platforms. So yes, I could say that it's definitely a conduit for young creatives, young talent to get into a professionalized space and to have their work profiled and prominently showcased, and that we should always celebrate as we celebrate World Television Day and the work that Soweto TV continues to do.
Now, I mean, as digital tools become more accessible, how can young creators use AI, social media, online platforms effectively while still honoring authentic local storytelling? And I mean, you also taught at institutions like Virtual Radio Academy. I mean, how does media education complement the industry experience in shaping the next generation of broadcasters?
No, definitely. I think we've seen a great shift in the capacity building and skills development areas where institutions of higher learning are focusing on empowering students, both young and old, with skills to be able to tell stories just utilizing their mobile devices. And what I think is important is that we must not stop refining our art to tell really great stories, because in all honesty, all of these platforms that we are seeing today will potentially change. There'll be a new TikTok tomorrow. There'll be a new YouTube tomorrow.
Yeah.
But if we have the skills to tell really amazing stories, then we should be able to use those skills on any platform. So our approach should be platform agnostic, I would say. We must be able to tell really great stories using sound, using visuals, and then use the available tools and platforms to find expression. I also think that what we are seeing with your artificial intelligence, not just AI, there's many of them. We are able to edit videos quicker, we're able to edit sound quicker, but of course, I think human supervision is important, because otherwise AI might not edit the sound naturally or might compromise the story that you are trying to tell. So what I would say is, for young people, get the relevant skills. You've got the National Electronic Media Institute of South Africa, that being NEMISA. Yes, you mentioned the Virtual Radio Academy. You also have IMA. There's a number of training institutions and programs that are sponsored by AICTA, which empower specifically youth with skills that they would require to become successful in running a creative business, not just for entertainment, not just for fun, but to be able to run a successful business utilizing those new technology and newer skills that we are seeing that are facilitated by this massive digital transformation that I think our country is experiencing with the rest of the world.
Shoshwe, much appreciated for taking the time and joining us. Unfortunately, we ran out of time, but I'm glad that you've mentioned your vision for South African television, and especially in this time of artificial intelligence, and also how can they inculcate that into their workings and not entirely rely on using AI, as concerns have been raised about the use of AI in various newsrooms also across the country. I'm very much glad you mentioned that. Much appreciated for taking the time.
Thank you very much. Have a hot.